URA. He has also served as a church leader and a pastor. David is also serving on the board of Orchard International Christian School, located in Chambogo. He is married to his lovely wife, Irene, and they've been married for 19 years, and they together have 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. Join with me, friends, as we welcome Mr. David Rusoke to speak to us about taxation in business. Mr. David, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Lillian. I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to be here to share on taxation. I will set up my presentation right now, and we start. Thank you. Yes, today I will be dealing with taxation is crucial in management God's way, and a bit of, yes, how it works in the marketplace. But I'm excited to be here, and I will be referring to Uganda, the Ugandan context within my presentation. I will deal with what is taxation. I will also get into the biblical taxes that are administered in Uganda. Then deal with a bit of benefits of compliance. I'll explain what compliance is, benefits of compliance, and the costs of non-compliance. The topic that we're dealing with is very broad. There are different laws that deal with, and so I might not get into details, a lot of details, but again, this is to at least start us off, and I could come back, or we could organize another meeting where I'll be able to go deeper into especially the Ugandan context and how we look at tax. So taxation, what is taxation? I want to look at it, and there are very many ways of seeing it. There are different taxes which sit on different tax bases, and they have different rationale. But it's a compulsory payment, usually a percentage or a fee, which is levied on income, on property value, on sales price, and it is paid to government. You could also say it's an involuntary fee. Involuntary, meaning that you don't have a choice. You must abide, you must take care of it. And of course, I'll talk about instances where some people are exempted, but it is an involuntary fee. It is compulsory by individuals or businesses to government. And this compulsory charge could also be a levy imposed on an individual or a legal entity. And it's by a state or a functional equivalent of a state. It could be a local, in our context, we'll maybe look at, it could also be a local government. Taxes can also be imposed, yes, by subnational entities and municipalities, local governments, especially in order to take care of something in our communities.
Mr. Rusoke.
Yes.
The slides are down. Do you mind putting them up again? Your shared screen, it's down.
Thank you. Okay. Here. Okay, let me try to. Let me see. Share screen. Windows. Are we back?
Yes, you're back. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, I was talking about taxation is also a non-quid pro quo payment, meaning that you do not get an exact amount back for the fee that is paid or the amount that is paid. Payments, you don't get the exact benefit, but you are obliged to pay. And definitely in our context these days, there is a law that sets those into place. I will now get into the practice of taxation in the Bible. And we see taxation coming through as income tax, property tax, special assessment taxes, poll taxes, and we may not have the details of the base and the rate, but ideally they are mentioned, and I will highlight on some of these examples in the Bible. In Genesis chapter 47, we see Joseph in Egypt. And Joseph was he was really called and blessed and anointed. And one of the things that he did from the time he was in prison, this is for management, he actually led to the organization of prisons to an extent. He actually started rehabilitation, cleaning prisons, and he set a standard for prisons, and that took on, and it forms how prisons are set up, and most of the rehabilitation exercises that are in prison. Some texts write about him really setting them out, and he did it so well. And of course, many civilizations copy from that, and they take it and use it. But in chapter 47, verse 26, we see him living, especially after the dream, and he's made a leader in Egypt. He actually, when Pharaoh gave him the authority to do as he wishes, he actually interpreted the dream, and he talks about a fifth of the produce being taken in the years of plenty, and he led to that. It became law that everyone should bring a fifth on the yield of property, and he actually collected a fifth for the 7 years, to a point that after collecting it all, the Egyptians actually started coming and giving everything to themselves. Pharaoh wasn't in charge of Egypt, but the leadership of Joseph led to the supply, especially in the years of famine. The whole world had to go to Egypt for supply because of a system of taxation. And it was 20%, a fifth is 20% of the yield. And actually on the exit of the Israelites from Egypt, we see that tax being dropped to 10%. But later we see they actually raise it again. But this is a form of direct tax that we see in the Bible. Then in Leviticus chapter 27, verse 32, we also see a tenth of the herd of the flock, and whatever passeth under the road, being set apart and put aside. Right? Ideally, it's from the income, it's set aside for activities as per the commandment. Continuing with income tax, we see in Deuteronomy chapter 18, we see first fruits being set apart for priests due from the people. So it was a law that, look, set aside first fruits for our leaders who deal with us in matters, in religious matters, the priests, and everyone knew they were supposed to take it. So it's important to note that we must have a basis, a rationale, a basis, and that is a law which guides people on what tax is. And of course, they are grouped in tithes, especially the Deuteronomy text, but it's a tax on income. And of course, it was on agricultural production, which was largely something that used to happen those days. Let me see. Yes, let me now go to property tax and the payment of national debt. We see in 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 35, that the king gave an order. First of all, they were paying Pharaoh duties. And so at times when there is annexation or when another nation helps another nation, we see that there is tax that is raised, and it is raised from the people, and it is paid. This one, in context, there was silver and gold which was paid to Pharaoh, but then he came back to also tax the land and ensure that according to everyone who had land, they had to contribute something, because land meant that there was productivity, and of course that is agriculture. And point to note, as of June 2020, you can go to the reports on our debt from the Uganda Debt Network. They usually produce a report. I last read their report in last year, but as of June 2020, we had a debt of 20.55 billion against GDP. And of course, that is high, but we should be taking care of debts. We still pay Tanzania for having helped us in 1979 for every bullet that was shot here. And I think we're paying Congo for some of the things we did there. And so as taxes are collected, these are some of the things that they do. We also, I know we're in Somalia, but I'm sure in the agreement, one day Somalia will be able to start paying us for really rescuing them in the times when they needed help. And of course, you can see what is happening in Somalia when there is no government. Okay, they have a form of government now, but previously they had warlords who would, take care of the system. So if there is no order, there is a challenge. We also see poll tax in the Bible, and we see it as a flat sum which is levied on per capita in Exodus chapter 30, verse 12. And we see that each person who is 20 years old at the time of departure of the Israelites having to contribute something when they departed from Egypt. So that is poll tax. We also see 1 shekel poll tax mentioned in Nehemiah 10:32. And of course, this was taken to the temple, to the house of God, for service of the house of God. So ideally, we see that everyone that had to go to the house of the Lord, and we see it again in Matthew 17, again in the New Testament. We might say the other one was the Old Testament, but again, we see Matthew 17, that there is a poll tax which has to be paid as people went to Jerusalem. And then we see at the time of Jesus's birth, of course, people going in. and it's per capita, it's on each head. It's within the period. We can see every year during a specific time they had to go. So there's a way when the law is being fashioned, it's put in a way where you can easily collect. And so every year everyone had to go to Jerusalem, and of course they would pay this tax. Then there's the special assessment tax we see in Second Chronicles, sorry, chapter 24, 5, where Joash gathered together the priests and the Levites and said that they should go out into the cities of Judah and gather of all Israel money to repair the house of the Lord. So this is a specific task, and they wanted to repair the house of the Lord. So again, the people had to bring together. So a tax is put in place for a specific, a special task. Of course, here they wanted to repair the temple, which had been built by Solomon. We also see in verse 6 and 9 that Moses had levied a tax to maintain the tabernacle. And that's how we see the temple tax and it continuing to develop over the seasons and the times. I'll now go into indirect taxes. In Ezra 4:20, we see tributes and customs duties paid to rulers. And of course, we see when Solomon annexed and took over most of the neighboring states, he made sure that they they paid a levy to him. And he also did it in such a way that he decided of all the people, all the men, there was a tax. They were supposed to go out to war, and they were out there in Lebanon and the different other places. Second Chronicles 17:20, and I will give you this presentation for you to go further if you need more justification. But we see tributes which were brought to Jehoshaphat from the Philistines and the Arabians. And then again, we see now in the New Testament, Romans chapter 13, 6 verse, from verse 6 through 7, we see a tribute that we should give a tribute to whoever is supposed to get this tribute, and we should give a customs due to whoever it's due. And that is one of the, yes, the guidance that we have on taxation in the Bible. And of course, you remember Jesus, when Peter came to him and to tell him about the customs dues. It's in Matthew 17:25. And we see eventually he said, let us not offend them. And he orders Peter to go and get the first fish, and he took care of the taxes for the whole team. So ideally, we should pay taxes, and there are various customs duties, sales tax, and there's a term there, halak. I don't know how to mention that, but ideally, that is on the part of the indirect taxes. And you've heard of exemptions. So there's also a part of exemptions. So it shouldn't surprise you that there are exemptions. But we see Joseph right from the beginning realizing that the priests shouldn't pay. I think they were advisors to Pharaoh or something. He could have seen the type. He must have been revealed to by God, I think. But we see him in Genesis saying that, no, let us leave out the priests. Save for the priests. When you read, he talks about except the land of the priests, only of which became not Pharaoh's land. And it's still in force today. And ideally, that's why you've seen, of course, it develops to a point where the church, find most of the churches are exempt from income tax. They're exempted because of the activities that they carry out as priests to God. So you find there are laws. Of course, today we have laws specific that deal with that. But ideally, we see it right from Joseph, him saying, no, the priests shouldn't shouldn't, and their land shouldn't be taken. And by the way, Joseph, after his reign, you find that everybody, the people even gave their bodies to Pharaoh, and they said, shall we die, and yet we don't have anything? Look, you have our lives, our land, everything. And that's how Pharaoh became the most powerful leader, because Joseph, they didn't have anything after, when the years of scarcity came, and he gave them, and they had to pay for it, but they paid with their land, with their animals, with everything, until they all belonged to Pharaoh. And it introduced another type of leadership, which again, also on the kingdom side, we see it playing a role in the way kingdoms are run later, because kings started owning everything. And of course, the other day we saw the king, and a king coming into power, and you find they have a kingdom, and everything there belongs to them. But these are some of the things that came out. But what I wanted to bring out is an exemption, and specific exemptions, people being exempted. We see it starting here, and of course, it is in the Bible. Then there are some negative attitudes towards taxation that we also see in the Bible. And we also see a few other interesting, let me call them points. King Solomon ruled so hard, and he put a heavy yoke on the different people. So they were paying. It was quite, right now we have the canons of taxation, which Adam Smith also brought, which are embedded in every law. But previously, someone would just say, let them pay. And when his son comes up, you'll read Second Chronicles, you'll find that his friends advise him. He didn't listen to the elders, and he decided to double and make it worse. And then we see Israel really falling apart, or being divided into two, because there are some who refused. So a taxation system might be challenging, and of course that's why we have a lot of research around taxation. By the time there is a bill, the elected people who have to decide on whether that law that is being brought into force is beneficial to the citizenry. Yes, and in Amos 4:4 we see an address for, there's a rebuke for people that were bringing tithes after 3 years, or after 1 year when it's due. And there's a rebuke there, meaning that, of course, due dates start coming into play. I'll talk later on due dates, returns and due dates, and how there are even penalties right now and interest for you not really bringing it when it's supposed to be brought. Because the reason for collecting the taxes is really, there are different reasons, but right now it is to take care of the citizenry. And in Second Chronicles, I think this is the last part on the biblical side, chapter 31, verse 5. A commandment is set for giving, I think there's a commandment set for giving. And again, that is something we need to look at. This is history. The Incan Empire, Egypt, there's a word there. There's a dynasty there in Greece and Rome. Julius Caesar was very, he introduced a 1% sales tax. And Caesar Augustus was also a very good tax strategist. He actually also brought out a 4% rate for slaves. And there was a general rate, which was a sales tax. So he introduces these other different taxes. So now we see taxation developing and taking on different forms. And he also had a tax for inheritance tax. And of course, he tasked, everywhere they conquered, he tasked the cities to collect taxes. And they would just take them to Rome, and there were some which were left for the people. for the communities where it had been collected. Good. That is it on the biblical side. Let me now talk about the importance of taxation. Of course, taxes are levied to finance government expenditure. That's why the budget is read. And the budget is read for our context in June, especially in the East African region. It's read in June, and government lays out how they expect, or first of all, they give an account of what happened the year before, the year ending, and then they give their expected, I'll call it the expected income for the year and expected expenditure. For this year, I'm aware government has a budget of 48 trillion Ugandan shillings. And of the 48 trillion, Uganda Revenue Authority will collect 25. And when they collect 25 trillion, you can see that we're about 50%, meaning that government has to look for more resources in order to take care of its citizenry, its promise to the people. And of course, you will find the breakdown, but I would like to mention a few things. There's military, defense, very important. You can see what happened to Ukraine the other day. Many of us have been in doubt why governments defend themselves, but that's something that we need to think about. Of course, you can imagine if something happens to you, you're supposed to go to the police and you write that statement, and they develop that statement that you write usually is tabulated, put into statistics, and you'll hear police reporting where there are different problematic areas, and ideally it informs government of what is happening in the citizenry. So if something happens to you, kindly, it's important for you to report. Some people say, what will police do? But you see, if you don't report it, first of all, the whole police force is paid. They're paid. Even the defense forces are paid in order to make sure they're there. I think they say they are here for law and order. So it's important for us to report in order for them to follow up, and they're supposed to follow up. That's their mandate. They protect property. Ukraine is a good example. I don't think I have to go into that. Economic infrastructure. If all of us, I come from Fort Porto, Toro, if I had to cross and pay duties to everyone who is maybe a landlord, it would be very expensive. But government has set up roads, systems that, and there's a whole economic infrastructure, public works, the operation of government. Government has, and for some, government has, of course, expenses as they run the business in managing the people. So we really need to ensure, okay, I'm looking at the time. Okay, let me rush. Operation of government, we have to take care of healthcare systems. The healthcare system right now is overburdened because of the fact that we have few resources and there are few people. Garbage collection, public transportation. Some of us, there's that popular saying, to serve a government at Yambe, but you find, and I'll say this here, the tax to GDP has stagnated between 11 and 13. This year it has raised, last year it raised up to 13%. And yeah, that means that we have very few people who are contributing. We have 50 million people, and I can also say it here. We have 60 million Ugandans. And there's a UN statistic that says by 2100, we will be the 10th most populated country in the world. We'll have about 250 million Ugandans, but we're very active. But one of the things to note is that on the tax register, we've just made 3 million, but about 1 million, 0.5 are almost borders. So we have about 1 million taxpayers, pay as you earn, the biggest, and it's contributing. So we have very many people who are not contributing what they should contribute, and they expect service from government. It's quite interesting. Yes, so these are some of the reasons. Another reason why we need taxation. Taxation is there as a social and economic policy, and we use it to distribute the tax burden. We use it to discourage economic activities. Like you can see, some of the taxes on alcohol go up to 150%, 200% for, I think, the tobacco industry there. So their taxation is also put there to actually discourage consumption. We have these beauty products. Those ones are actually not supposed to be imported. So, and they're bad, and that's why you find there are people trying to smuggle them, and there's a whole enforcement unit, and some even use guns. They're like mafias. Anyway, protection of the local industry. At times, the taxation is high in order to protect the local manufacturers or the local traders. It's also used to stimulate or discourage consumption. I've talked about that. It's also there to stimulate employment, for protection of the environment. If you import a car, there's an environmental levy, and there are some cars you can't bring. Yes, so this is all a reason for taxation, and there are many ways. Of course, there are also people who use taxation for political reasons. They'll really force it down some people. Taxes administered in Uganda, we have the non-tax revenue, the stamp duty, license fees, and motor vehicle fees, change of ownership, and so on. Land, if you're doing land transactions, if your agreement to be binding and it becomes a legal document when you pay stamp duty, and some of those documents which are agreements for mortgage deeds and so on. Then we have the customs duties, which we now call international taxes. We have import duty. If you import something, this is when you will find there is a point at which you'll find these. We have the excise duty, import duty, VAT on imports, excise duty, environmental levy, and the infrastructure levy. And then we have other non-tax revenue where maybe you're going for a bid. If you want a permit for minerals, you will, there are different ministries which have different mandates, and you find you have to get permits from them. And of course, yes, there are those. Then under domestic taxes, there's corporation tax, which is for corporations or business entities. Then there's the individual income tax. There's presumptive, rental tax, and pay as you earn, which is on employees, but it's a form of income tax and withholding tax. Then we have what I would call the former sales tax or tax on goods, and that is the value added tax. We have the game, pool and baiting. Then we have the local excise duty. Those are the taxes that are administered in Uganda. And of course, there are laws for each of these. We have the Income Tax Act, we have the Value Added Tax Act, we have the Game Pool and Betting Act, we have the Local Excise Duty Act, we have the Stamp Duty Act, Motor Vehicle is Traffic Road and Safety Act. Then, of course, we have the East African Management, the act that governs the Customs Management Act, yes. Then we, of course, different laws have a way, like if you open a pharmacy, you'll find there's a way you are governed. And yes, now as we administer these taxes through the laws, of course, there are returns which we file, and I will now get into returns. For customs, you will find them, it's almost consumption based. When you import is when you'll find at the port of entry, you will find that, yes, you're supposed to adhere to some taxes. And then definitely also the others, the non-tax revenue. If you're selling land, you will find it there. If you're transferring a car, you'll find the change of ownership fees or the alteration fees and all that. Then, of course, if you want any of these other fees, when you go to the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies as they are mandated to govern. You'll find some taxes there. I'll now get into the domestic tax. I think I've talked about those, but I'll now run into returns. A return is a declaration. Of course, the Commissioner General has returns which he's mandated to carry out his duty, and he sets out the returns. And so what you're looking at are, I'll talk about the monthly returns, the first four: withholding tax, payee, lead, local excise duty, and VAT, monthly returns. And the withholding tax is multi-stage tax on various services. And of course, someone withholds from you also at point of entry. You'll find you're paying a 6%. And of course, there are some people who are exempted from this. Those are details we'll get into. Of course, the person who collects it files, it's a monthly tax. So the return, the withholding tax return for the month of October, which we finished last night, will be submitted by the 15th day of this month, November. Pay as you earn, if you have employees, you're supposed to deduct pay as you earn. By the way, if you don't, then you are the one who bears the burden. If you have employees and you're not withholding from their salaries and allowances, you become the person who is, because the law says you should. So there's a rationale for that in the laws, and it's also a monthly, and by the 15th of November, we'll have October coming in. Same for local excise duty. And the Local Excise Duty Act has excisable goods and services in the Act, especially manufacturers. And you'll find we need to acquaint ourselves with the law in order to file the return. The value-added tax, same thing. There is a monthly return, and by the 15th day of the month, you should have filed. Then there are also, right now we have non-residents. You've seen the likes of YouTube, Facebook, people who are, and of course, non-residents are people. Again, that is something I'll discuss maybe another time. But at the end of a quarter, by the 15th day, for example, a quarter could be July, August, September, they should file the return by October the 15th. Then we have the income taxes. Income tax is levied from the businesses and from rental income. You find that these are annual taxes, but there is a provisional return which you file by media, because I can imagine if you're selling a pen, for example, you'll find you bought it at maybe 1,000 shillings and you're selling it at 2,000. But the profit, especially for corporations, it is 30% net profit or chargeable income. You'll find that within the year, as you sell, maybe the net profit is 100 on a pen, and should be able to pay 30%. So for each sale you're making, so there are provisional returns for each sale as you make it. You're supposed to calculate and ensure you know, and you take that money away and pay it. Then at the end of the year, you file the end of year return and make sure that you have a balance sheet. You show this is exactly what I spent. There could be a few corrections there, and you file the return. Now, for each of these returns, if you don't file on time, especially, there is a penalty. There are timelines which are within the law, which I'll get into maybe next time. I could onboard all of us on some of these processes and give you examples, but the time I'm given today, I can't get into all that. So there are penalties and interest. There's a penalty for filing the return late. There's interest for paying the money late. And that's when people say URA is problematic. It's a problem. But if you file and pay these on time, there are times people are not even doing anything, but government cannot know that you didn't do anything. The economy has been bad. How do we know? File the return and you will show that actually I didn't pay the employees this month. file the return and show that there was nothing. If you don't, the law gives URA the mandate to raise an assessment. Why do they raise an assessment? And they will use the industrial average for all taxpayers within your I'll call it, they'll get an industrial average of what business you are doing. They'll get, let's say you are in wholesale, they'll get an industrial average of all wholesalers, and they'll raise an assessment for you. And some people are surprised, they raised so much, I've never earned this money. File the return on time, you will not have any problem. Pay the tax on time, you will not pay interest. And interest is compounded, 2% compounded for some of the tax heads, meaning at the end of the year, you were talking of 24%, because government wants to take care of the citizenry and you're here keeping the money. Of course, some people use it to make more money, so they count the cost. So you could be among those people. That's why government comes in. What are the benefits of compliance? You'll be able to get a tax clearance easily. We now have tax, what we call transactional tax clearances. If you want to do business with government, who is the biggest businessman in town? You've heard they have 48 trillion taking care of the citizenry. 48 trillion is what they're going to disburse in the economy, meaning, yes, they're the biggest businessman in town, government and all its agencies. So for you to get a bid, you need a tax clearance. So faster tax clearing processes will be for you if you have filed and paid your taxes on time. Fast track refunds, there are also refunds for overpayments. In some tax heads, you'll find you've paid, but there's an offset, you can ask for a refund. Faster refunds will be gotten because you have filed and paid on time and you've kept your business records. Withholding tax exemptions, you cannot get an exemption if you are a problematic taxpayer. Less intrusive audits that are costly and time consuming when you file and pay. When you don't, that's when the assessments come, then you have to object to the assessments and you'll find a full-scale audit. Yes, when you file and pay on time and are compliant, you avoid unnecessary costly penalties and interest. The cost of non-compliance, this is, yes, default assessments. And of course, this is a story that is there every day. You'll find someone, they've given me an assessment of 100 million. How? I haven't started. But the people within your sector, the industrial average there is showing people are performing well. So we are seeing the economy is growing at maybe X%. So definitely, if you don't tell us, default assessment will be raised, and we are mandated to collect it, or Uganda Revenue Authority is mandated to collect it. So please, yes. Then I've talked about the fines, penalties, and interest. Agency notices is where if you keep quiet and you don't come, URA will lock your account. Then there are delays in clearance of goods. You'll bring your goods and you'll find it's locked. You can't enter them into the borders. You are attentive and you can't because there's some tax that you haven't paid, and you'll find first deal with that. Of course, reputation loss, distress proceedings at times. Right now, you even have to deposit checks. You can be put on a shame list and you can be prosecuted, and there is also seizure of property because government has a mandate to take care of the people, and of course you seem not to be there. Yes, I think I'm within time. This is it. Thank you very much. Yes. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Information about taxation, why we need to tax, and the benefits and the costs in case we are not compliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, members. There are a number of questions in the chat, which I will request you to get ready to answer them. But before then, I'm going to ask Anthony to take us through the call that has been prepared for
Thank you, Dr. Lillian. You may need to adjust I think your microphone or internet. Voice is not coming out very well. Yes, this is our final week. Thank you, Mr. David Rusoke. This was very enlightening. And like Dr. Lillian says, there are quite some questions here in the chat. Well, probably you may need to look through them as we do this little simple exercise. This is our final week for this series, Management God's Way. And like we usually do, we do some evaluation. We do also some poll. Why? Because they are upcoming activities. So we would love to hear your opinion and your suggestions for our consideration. I had shared with us a link on the groups to do some evaluation. On Friday, we plan to have a panel that would answer some of these questions. Probably the 10 minutes usually are not enough. So that form, which actually I'm also posting in the comment section now, is for you to infill and then write that question that you'd want the panel to address on Friday. Please do that because we do it to plan, one, for our panelists to have some background research on the question, but also to manage the time. It's usually not very encouraged to ask the question on that day because time is not always enough. So when you send in your question in advance, it makes it very easy to manage that time. So the form is put in the comment section. You can write your comment or question in there. But yet also we have a poll. This poll, I'm just launching it here. We will be voting as the questions are being answered, and I will be able to tell you the result at the end of it all. I realize that there are some topics that we have not yet looked at today, probably tomorrow's and Thursdays. So we will have this poll again on Thursday morning. So in case some blanks cannot be filled, that's still fine. We'll have it on Thursday morning. So I'm launching the poll now. Please vote as the questions are being answered so that by 7:30, if possible, I can give you the report. So the poll is launched right now as I hand back to Lillian, the moderator, and Mr. Rusoke.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether I'm being heard now.
Yeah, much better. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you. Pastor Anthony, I want to first do the poll before I bring out the questions.
The poll can be done even as the questions are being answered. So people can be voting as they are also hearing responses to questions, just to manage the time. That's okay?
Okay, thank you so much. There are indeed a number of questions. Mr. Rusoke, please get ready. The first question was from Robert, Mr. Robbie Muhumuza, and says, what's the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion? Is it ethical and wisdom for a Christian to avoid tax? And how can a non-profit ministry or NGO apply and get a tax exempt status in Uganda? So probably could first answer that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tax avoidance and evasion. Well, at times there are loopholes in the law, or the law is not clear, or it hasn't dealt with specific items. So what happens is that if you're good at the law, of course, the world is changing. Like you would say, before the phones came, there was no law on how we govern phones, but now we have a whole UCC. But it wasn't there before, or it was there and it was dealing with something else. So the world is dynamic. At times things change, and you find at times the law hasn't covered something, or it's vague. So what happens is that some people use that in order not to comply to the law. And I think that's where it's called avoidance. Evasion is where you deliberately try not to do what you're supposed to do. Okay? But of course here, we're supposed to avoid that. And having talked to you about the importance of taxation, I believe that we all should appreciate that. But avoidance is something that every year, even right now, we have just submitted things that we think can improve the laws. So people are meeting, they're submitting papers on what they want the law to be like, especially if it's disadvantaging some people with a comma or something. But some people use it as an advantage, or at times it's created like that. But when it's gray, of course, if you're good at tax planning, it's something you can plan on, and you can see the cost of either paying or not. If there's a gray area, of course, you can use that. But I wouldn't. I think we've covered much. Most of the laws we have really dealt with gaps. There's not much. But again, since we are in a global setting, at times that can happen. And I don't know. I don't want to give examples here because usually we can build castles on it. But I encourage all of us to be compliant. Taxation of non-profit making, NGOs or non-profit making, exemptions can be got. There is a criteria. Please go to ura.go.ug. There's a criteria that you use. Please ensure that you're keeping your books of accounts, you're showing, because at times the nature or the activity that we're doing might turn out to be business. So it depends. And we don't want you to have a canteen and you say yours is a non-profit making, and yet there are 40 canteens which are paying tax and only yours is exempt, and you find there is a problem. So we please look at the law and ensure that you don't have such where you have such conditions. You need to look at them, but keep your books of accounts, file your returns. You're entitled to ask for exemption, and when you do it, it's usually passed. There's a criteria which I can pass on later, but there's a list of a lot of things. If you haven't been filing returns, of course, you'll be asked to file your returns. If there's tax to pay, if you haven't been withholding from employees, all those things come into play. But if you've ticked off everything on the criteria, you're entitled to your exemption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is about the tithes and offerings in church. Someone is asking, should they also be taxed? And observing that some church leaders are exploiting the members, so should they also pay tax? Yeah, you can help to answer that.
Okay. When you look at church, like I said earlier, priests and some of this business was exempt. So there is an exempt schedule in the Section 1 of the Income Tax Act. Sorry, there's an exempt section which shows who is exempt, and that is what we use. Of course, for some of these organizations which are not for profit, when you file returns, you will not put income as sales because you're not selling anything, ideally. So there's a rationale for that. Some leaders who misuse God's money, now we will look at the tax heads which they are supposed to take, like pay as you earn. Are they paying the pay as you earn? Are they withholding tax where they ought to withhold? Are they paying for the businesses where there is business? Now, I don't think I am mandated to talk about the anointed of the Lord, but anyway, that one, I think it's, if you're doing business according to the way the law has set out and you're not paying, of course, will come for you. But church offerings are not business. They're not business, because a business has, or when you're selling a good, there's a price. There is price, there is but imagine on a tithe, I might be bringing my tithe of 100 million, someone is bringing but where we are selling books, where we are selling audio messages, there is a business aspect there. But I don't see on tithe and offering, it's a bit of a challenge. Of course, there are some countries which decide to go that way, but not in our case. And yes, so here I'll give my personal opinion. This is God's business. We should give our tithes and offering, but the state is for a long time has not, and where we've come from, they've not. Of course, if the evil one takes over, they might really levy some of these things, but its practice, belief, and faith doesn't have that tax element. So, yes, that's it. I hope, Jennifer, I've managed to say much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you take these two. One is asking why they tax some people who are just registering, like nurses. They're just coming from school and registering, and then they are being asked to pay tax. Then also Annette says, looks like those in formal employment are the ones mainly paying taxes. The informal who are actually earning much are not taxed. Can't URA come up with a system to tax everyone so that the burden on the formal employed is lessened? Then the other one is, why should foreign investors be exempted from paying taxes, and yet we have a heavy debt that is being passed on to the future generation? Over to you.
Thank you. Let me start with the nurses. If you go to your team today, please get some tax information, because you can file a nil return if you haven't done business. Right now, we even have presumptive returns. Presumptive returns are, or the presumptive assessment. During the pandemic, small and micro taxpayers were given better rates from 0 up to 150 million. You're considered zero. You're considered a small and micro taxpayer, and you can file that return. It has very minimal rates. The highest, if you have a turnover of 0 up to 10 million, it is 0. If you have a turnover from up to 150 million, 150 million are paying. Those with records, those without records have a maximum of 900,000 as income tax, while someone who is earning 100 million in employment pays almost 30 million. So those are good rates for those in businesses. But if you're nurse, there's a fee. I think there's a stamp duty that was put for all professionals for you to get your license. I think you're paying something that is a fee. It's not, it's a tax, yes, but it's like license, I think annual. But I want to say, if you have done no business, please file your return as nil, and there will not be any tax to pay. The formal people are paying. That's right, because employers are keeping records and they are mandated to withhold. So if they don't withhold, they'll pay. So it's the best performing tax, because it's an indirect tax. People are tasked with collecting it. They're very successful. Indirect taxes are very successful, because they reach more people, and people are able to honor. The informal sector, Uganda, it has been recorded that Uganda has an informal sector of up to 50% and beyond. It used to be up to 50, 60%, but it has come down, and it's about 50, 51, 52. The challenge with that is that means that most of our businesses are not formalized. They are not registered. They are not getting a trading license. They are trading. And because of this large informal sector, the formal people are paying. And of course, that means government collects all the people we call large taxpayers, medium taxpayers, the public sector office. Many of us are paying, but the informal sector, we've had challenges. Not that we are doing nothing. So there are drives, there are different programs, there are awareness. There's a lot of awareness out there. You'll find a taxman on a radio, but the moment you hear that URA is here to talk to us, many people change. It's not popular. You can imagine even, but Jesus said, "You pay," so that they are not offended or something like that. But I mean, and I think there is a saying. I should have added this one, that give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Many people don't like tax. It's not popular, but then they demand for the service. Like, I don't know, like if they don't get a service, it's a problem. So let's look at it. We are supposed to pay. If your brother and sister is not paying, please, you are an ambassador right now. And please send them to us. We have programs. I can send teams to teach. Where you have teams, if you invite us, we will come and teach you and help you, show you what to do. The repercussions are not good. Foreign investors and exemptions, let me end with that. Our economy, our leaders are thinking. It's not my place to shoot down what they're doing, but our president has talked about inviting people in order to you attract foreign investment, in order, because many of us cannot do what some of them are doing. So exemptions attract them, and that's why they're brought. Right now we have exemptions to especially those that are setting up big okay, before I go there, they are given exemptions in order to attract them. Because no one will come. You imagine you taking your money to Kenya, and the first day they are taxing almost half. They are not recognizing that you are even performing in there. So when there are exemptions, and now you've heard we can take milk to Kenya, you'll find many of us, people have been pouring milk. So you'll find all of us flocking to Kenya. So it's a policy for government. Let us read it. Let us go to the Uganda Investment Authority and look at how it's performing. The rationale is set. There is proper documentation, which we should acquaint ourselves with before we make some of these allegations. And of course, many of them go through Parliament. They are executed by our leaders, our chosen and appointed leaders, who are thinking for us. I know some of the people, we have brilliant minds. There are sons and daughters who are in the Ministry of Finance, who set the rationale. They do research. A lot of research goes into some of this work. It's not just an exemption. And it's something that we should appreciate. Please go read, go to the Debt Network, go to Ministry of Finance on their site. I'm sure they have the report for this last quarter, July through September. Please kindly read it and see what has been done, and then you'll be able to appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are running out of time, and yet there are still more questions. And so I would request that all of us whose questions have not been answered, please, we can forward them to the platform, and Mr. Rusoke will be there to answer them. Just take your questions there, but many people are appreciating you, Mr. Rusoke, for this education that you have brought to us concerning taxes, which I think is very important for each one of us to know and to appreciate. After all, Jesus said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Thank you very much. And I will request Pastor, someone has a hand. Someone has a hand. Maybe I could just have that person to say something before we say the words of the grace, and ask Pastor, is this Senga Sendagara, you have something you wanted to say? Please go ahead, and then we can conclude this meeting. Okay, if you kept, it's okay. I can see you are writing, so it's okay. You can have it go to the platform.
Yes, this is Richard. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mr. David. We've appreciated your presentation. I have a question. Sorry, the time is gone, but I had a question that was burning in my heart concerning the payments. Sometimes for us, I am a contractor. We are paid, like we are paid after 60 days. And when I make an invoice and through IFRS, you are a IFRS system, and you want that your taxes to be paid the next month, and yet I am paid after 60 days. And we have tried to raise that issue. I don't know what is Uganda, what are you going to do concerning that? Because you're asking me to pay for the money which is not paid yet. You know, we are paid after 30 days, after 60 days, and that's when we get the money. And yet when I make an invoice, you see it on the system, and you want the money to be paid the next day. I mean, the next month on the 15th. What have you done? Have you thought about that? What can we do? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Now, thank you. There was a recent amendment, especially beginning with this financial year, section 26 of the VAT.
We are not hearing.
Yeah, David, we are not hearing you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, thank you for that question. I was saying there was an amendment in the VAT Act which allowed us to use the cash counting for such, especially if you're supplying government-aided projects, if you're supplying government and you have like your BOQs, kindly write to us, or donor-funded projects, especially government, kindly write, and then we will change in IFRS, and there is a way you have to return that money, or in the return, you put that money there, but we don't claim it. But when government pays you, there's a place where you will put it even on the return. You will look at section C. There's a place where you put the cell, and there's where you have received the money. When you receive it, you'll put it there, but we will be aware. So there was an amendment that allows us to use the cash accounting, and section C will help you. I believe when you can call me, I can direct you, especially if you have that. Now, for other big people who are not government, I think it's a challenge. But again, you can write and ask for installments, or you make sure that you write to us, and we look for ways of managing it. You could go into installment, you could go into, there are different ways, but again, we are developing, and at least there is that change which happened this financial year, and we accept, we look at the contract, we key it in, and then we wait. When payment comes, that's when we'll start expecting, not before. So there is a window. I need to see which project, and then we address it. But you can write to the commissioner, especially to the assistant commissioner business policy, because they do something in your profile which allows you for you not to pay that money, but will be in the know of the amounts owing. Thank you. When you look at the return, you will see government aided, And when it's paid, you will see those, let me call them cells, where you can key in those figures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Pastor Anthony, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rusoke. Okay, I'm just reading the poll results quickly. First of all, I apologize. There's a section where I needed to do an advanced editing where we can fill in some text. We shall rectify that on Thursday. But 59%, we have 74% of us have voted, and you say that 59% that the series have been excellent. I'll just read the top one. And then, should the series be maintained 6:30 to 7:30? 92% of you said yes. And then you say, I would like the quarterly series to be maintained from Monday to Friday, 5 days. 57% of you said that. And our next quarterly series is slated for February. Which topic would you prefer? This one, strategic planning, has come out on top with 62%. And then between now and that time of the series of strategic planning, if Thursday still votes the same, how often should we meet? And then you say twice a week. 74% of you say twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. And then during that time, you said you want a topic about money and stewardship to be the one looked at between now and February, between November and February. And then hoping 97% said they would love to be a part of the AKBF in-person conference that will happen in April 2023. Thank you for taking part in this poll. We'll do the same on Thursday, and then we'll tell us our next course of action or grand finale on Friday. Back to you, Lillian.
And now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God and the fellowship
with us all now and Amen. Thank you, Dr. Rusoke. Thank you, Lillian.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Very grateful.